we don't see those numbers falling off at all.
So
Yes, sir.
go back.
I'm trying.
Well, I wrote the numbers down. There's
There we go.
one, so we have in the general fund, an excess of 1.6 million that we projected, plus license and permit is 1,052,000. So that's 2,652,000
No, sir.
more.
The 1.6 million, which is 1.6 million more than we anticipated adding last year. We added 6.1. That 1,052,000 would be figured into that 6.1 million increase for last year's budget.
Okay, so the 1.2 is part of the increase of 1.6.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
About $500,000 was non-recurring money. The other million is in recurring funds. But those were above and beyond expectations.
But bottom line budget, I guess is what I'm asking. We have a 1.6 million more than our budget called for.
Yes.
Last,
They include that, part of that 1.6 million is $1 million from fees and permits.
Correct. We were anticipating growing our general fund balance by $4.5 million. By the time the year ended, we'd grown it by $6.1 million.
So we have 1.6 million more than we anticipated.
Correct.
And of
But
that-
that's,
That's it. And of that $1.6 million, $1 million of it is in recurring
Okay.
revenues and $500,000 is non-recurring.
okay, so we,
I'm sorry, Mr. Mearsman, it looked like you were, okay. Okay. So the next thing is, this is just what I would consider, at least for my purposes, the key page of what the MAG report gave us. And you can see, we've already talked about, there was a 3.5% adjustment proposed. There was some adjustments to minimum, and then there were adjustments to compression. Their total change number was the $818,444. And that's really where the finance team's work started as we prepared for this presentation. You'll see we took that 818,444, and we know that that is going to be spread out over 26 payrolls. We added 7.65% for FICA. We added the state retirement, and then the first responders retirements to that. And the impact over a full year for what MAG is suggesting is $1,042,362. So then I took that, divided it by 26, because that's how many payrolls we have in a year, and it comes out to just over $40,000. So then what the city manager is recommending is that we would bring to you a budget amendment for $280,000. You see that in the box at the right. That is the 7 payrolls from April 10th through the pay period that includes June 30th. So it's 7 payrolls. So 7 times 40 is $281,000. We would bring to you a budget amendment, first reading with a planned first reading on the 5th of March, second reading on the 19th. If it's approved, that does give Pam and members of my team and the department heads and Josh the opportunity to process all of our paperwork. That is at this point still a very manual process where everybody ends up leaving with a signed piece of paper that's been signed by 3 or 4 different people, indicating that their salary went from X to Y or their hourly rate went from X to Y. And people have become accustomed to that. We tried not to do it a couple of years ago, and the first thing we got was a bunch of phone calls about, oh, I heard I got a raise. So, I mean, I don't know what we're going to do. But so right now the plan is to continue doing that. Anyway, saying all that to say, that gives us the opportunity to make this, assuming council agrees and wants us to bring that forward on the 5th and then the 19th, that this is what it would look like. It would be an increase in the budget of $280,000 for the current year. So that answers if we did it in 26, what does it look like? And then the annualized payroll for fiscal 26 is $13,733,000. And you saw on the previous slide, the annual Implementation cost of that is $280,000 for those 7 weeks. For a year, it's $1,042,632.
My question for John was, the $1,042,000, what is the percentage of that of our overall payroll? Because we do have to include the retirement basis and FICA and everything else in there. We look at a number of 818K, and that's just cash dollars out. But total expense is the $1,042,000.
Yes, sir.
But what is the percentage of that of our total payroll? Our total payroll is what, 13 million?
Yeah, so it would be the
7.6.
it would be the 1 million divided by the 13.
The only reason I'm asking these questions is if we as a council are asked them, we have to be able to provide.
Sure, and we can, you know,
I'm
if
not
as
disputing anything.
no, sir, I understand that. But as we get through this, if there's, you know, a one-page talking points that you would like finance and city manager to prepare, we're certainly happy to do
That
that.
would be an excellent idea.
Okay. So that's what I had, except for Mr. Gruber, you're going to make your pitch now, I guess.
No, I just,
Okay.
I kind of mentioned before, this to me is my priority to you to implement. As compared to anything else, I think this, again, because it's a foundational piece for us, that's why I'm presenting it to you. And given what we've presented about our financial position, I believe it's something that we can implement realistically without overextending ourselves and without becoming uncomfortable.
May I make a comment? I think setting that competition 51st percentile is strategically wise because we're 50% above, 50% below, and that makes us really strategically in a good position. And I think that's a wise, to do less,
Yeah.
I think would be really a recruitment challenge, and to do more would be, I think, unnecessary. So I think that 50 percentile makes a lot of sense to me.
Thank you. And I'll tell you, the way we kind of monitor where we're at is evaluating when we have a position that comes open, how long does it take us to fill that position, and what qualities are we getting out of the candidate that we're able to bring in. Right now, I believe we're competitive, and I hope this keeps us in that same spot. But we have to be careful that we're not getting out ahead of ourselves because realistically, we have a lot to offer beyond just salary and compensation. We are very much an up-and-coming community. That means if you get involved in our organization now, you have opportunities for upward movement within your career field, because as we continue to grow, we'll need to have more layers of staff within our organization. And so this is a great tool in our toolbox, but it's by no means the only thing that we have to offer to bring and retain employees.
Couple of comments. I'll be Debbie Downer. First of all, we have an extra 1.6 million, whatever. Okay. One of the justifications in our debate last year about not giving a tax decrease was the fact that, we have so many capital things to do. So we can't give a tax decrease so now we have extra money, we're going to give it away and not use it towards all the things we have to do. Okay, so I support the compensation package, start, middle. That's just wise. Every place I ever worked had a similar kind of setup. But where I struggle is why we have the need to do it before the budget year starts. I struggle with that. Have a tax decrease. Put it towards the fire station we need. If the justification is we need the money for CIP, now why isn't that justification being applied here? My personal thing would be, how I feel about tax reduction. So, because I believe that when we're doing good, everyone should benefit, including the taxpayer. Okay, we're leaving them out all the last year for the first time in 12 years. So what I would say is start at the budget year. Start at July 1st. Okay, because you're talking about, bottom line, 7.6% increase in our payroll. That's not 3.5, okay? And I would challenge that based on what everybody else is getting in the neighborhood. Especially if we're competitive now, then and if we have to stage it so we don't have a large number in 1 year, that would be my suggestion. And I know everybody's out there cursing me under their breath, but that's just how I feel about it, because as was said in last year's budget hearings, we have a lot of things we have to do. And so perhaps some of that excess money should be put towards all those needs.
Yes, sir. To that point, and just within the $1.6 million that we're looking at, I was making a distinction between the recurring revenues and the non-recurring revenues for a reason, because the non-recurring revenues are exactly what we've been identifying for use in our CIP program. And so part of that number that came in, was $500,000 from the nickel plate settlement. Again, funds that we weren't necessarily anticipating receiving because we knew that they were out there. We just didn't know when it was going to be resolved. And so those were funds that came in above expectations. And as we discussed, we put a portion of that into our rainy day fund, and then we put the remaining portions of that into our capital improvement program. And so I do think that we are trying to address both of those things. When it comes to the timing of the implementation, the reason why I'm requesting that you consider implementing it now is because we possess the report, and the report tells us that if we want to remain competitive in terms of paying our staff, that we should be paying them what the report indicates. And so I understand that certainly from a policy standpoint, if you think it's more appropriate to incorporate it in next year's budget, we'll absolutely do that. But I do think that there's justification to at least make the request to you today if you want to then consider that.
Well, me personally, wait till the budget year. And then if we have an extra, it's 3 months or less, 7 weeks. I'd say wait and take that money, and we'll decide when we have the whole picture, the whole budget, to decide where that we want to spend that extra $1.6 million. And I think that's the proper time to put it in rather than a budget amendment. I agree with Mr. Mearsman. I'm uncomfortable with that.
Okay.
My question, Josh, is reoccurring and non-reoccurring. So from what I'm hearing then is our reoccurring is only $800,000.
It's just over $1 million, $1,054,000.
Just over $1 million. And that just barely would cover this increase that we're talking about. And I do agree with the mayor on some concerns about this. It looks good right now, and we don't have that crystal ball that we know what the future is going to bring. A lot of things can happen. Nothing may happen in that time. But I do think it may be prudent to wait until the budget comes around, especially since we are so close to that time frame right now.
Sure. And that's why we have this discussion.
And there again, this is all about transparency to the public. They might have questioned why we are doing this prior to knowing what our budget is going to be. The departments have yet to submit them, and we know there's going to be some increases in our budget that are non-personnel, equipment, other things like that. We just don't know. We have a lot of irons in the fire right now, and until we identify what all those irons are and a priority with them, I would feel more comfortable waiting until the budget time.
Understood.
I just have a question. Harry, excuse me, thank you. I just have a question. I think the points that both have been made are good ones. But the opposite side of that question for me is, doing what we've suggested, does that create any kind of hardship for you that we may not be aware of? My sense is it isn't, because the time is short, but I think it's an important question to ask, just in case we're not aware of something.
Yep. I don't think there's necessarily any difficulties for me if we look at implementing this as part of the adoption of next year's budget. Just from a timing standpoint, it's a couple of months difference. Now, again, I'm making the request because I think it's establishing that baseline, and the fact that we possess it means that we should do something with it. So along those lines, what I think would be detrimental to the organization is knowing that we have these recommendations from the report and not implementing them. That to me is a morale killer for the organization, because we've told staff we possess information that says you should likely be paying more for the position that you're in order to keep us competitive, but we're not going to do that. And so that to me is what I need to avoid. But as far as just delaying it and including it as part of implementation of next year's budget, I don't see any issues with that.
The only thing I would like to add to doing it sooner is my experience over the years. If you have a deficit in compensations or baselines, it's almost impossible to make those up because you have guidelines in terms of the maximum amount of increases you can give people. So once you get a person in that situation who might be a very good employee, it creates a situation that is hard to fix without some major policy deviance. And so there's the other side to what you're doing, which I understand and makes sense.
Yes,
So I just want to throw that out.
Okay.
Josh, just to be clear with all the staff, I agree with the compensation study's recommendations, but I do prefer to wait until budget time.
Understood. Understand the
I
big
agree
picture.
with what you're saying. Saying no could be detrimental. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying for the public's perception and everybody else's, I'd feel much more comfortable waiting until budget to do it.
Understood.
And since I agree with that, do you want a straw poll here?
No, I think the impression that I'm getting is that, so what would have been the next step is if you were supportive of it, we would have introduced an ordinance to effectuate the budget amendment. But knowing that you've expressed some concerns with timing and wanting to see that bigger picture in the overall budgetary impact, we won't introduce that, but we'll look at incorporating these recommendations into my budget proposal when I present it to you in April, I believe is when we're scheduled to present it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right, so the last item that we have today is talking about our wetland buffer ordinance. And so I'm going to ask Katie and Brianna to go ahead and come on up, and they'll lead this discussion, and I'll come back up there and join y'all.
I hate to do this since you walked all the way up here, but can we take 5 minutes?
Oh, sure. We got to pull it up anyway.
Okay.
Good suggestion.
No fucking.
Us older
I appreciate a chance to talk about wetland buffers again, since we've been enjoying this topic. We did have the opportunity to, yes, enjoy. We had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Mearsman and discuss some things, and knowing that we are heading to getting this ordinance adopted and what we really think need to be happen, we looked a lot at the science, and so I'm going to do a review and a proposal on what we would like to take to Planning Commission. So as discussed previously, we consider other ordinances, and we wanted to look at what were the best practices across the board. We want to put standards in place so that there's no questions any longer as to what it applies to, how it applies. We will go to the Planning Commission, and this will go to the Land Development Regulations section of the MZDO. Therefore, all the questions about development agreements and everything, the land development regulations are applied as they are amended. So they will be included in that. It will not be part of the zoning. It'll be part of the land development regulations. Our MZDO has those two separate documents, and this is going well, like stormwater and those types of things. So then we would continue through council, and this will apply to new applications once adopted. Development agreements that are already in place, it will only apply to new master plans or development permits as a part of those. Example I just said to Katie, Riverton Point, this is not going to apply to Riverton Point because they are already master planned and established, but some of the new ones coming in, the new master plans that we haven't considered yet. So as have master plan approval and land disturbance permits. We've talked about regional examples. I did get a little bit more clarification on a couple of these. Bluffton's, as we discussed, does not apply to the development agreements. Theirs is also under review to be amended. I'm not sure exactly what direction they're going in, but they are currently working on that. Greenville County, Josh explained to us what riparian buffer meant, but what does that really apply to? What it is they don't have wetlands. They don't have swampy areas in Greenville like we have here. They have streams and waterways. So their buffer applies to streams and state waters. That's exactly what it applies to. So if it's a jurisdictional stream, then it's going to apply. If it's just a bog, it's not necessarily going to. It also applies to all new developments. There is a portion of Greenville County that is unzoned, and that is really where they're having most of their concern with this, when these new developments coming into that unzoned area. So that's where it mainly applies to the outlying areas. Savannah, 35 jurisdictional, can be reduced and averaged. In Georgetown County, we talked about their pending on their areas as well. Purpose of this ordinance, we discussed, we want to protect the environment, we want to protect our wetlands, we want to prevent future detriments and flooding and all the different wildlife buffers, wildlife refuges, and everything that we have. We want to make sure that we're clear with affirmative requirements and monitor reporting and enforcement. We want to make sure we have all of these positive things in here, so that we're clear and there's not questions every time we come bring you a master plan. We talked a lot about the science again. I wanted to leave this slide in here just to show that we were looking at all of the criteria. That's where we came up with the 35 feet that we're going to be recommending. The 35-foot buffer, not averaged, is coming out of this science. The buffers over 30 feet will remove pollutants more consistently, and that's where we're going for it. So we looked at different approaches: fixed non-disturbance buffer with additional setbacks. That's basically what we are looking at, because we do have setbacks. We also have buffers. We would like that non-disturbed buffer is what we are looking at. A lot of places have the case-by-case determination, but we want to give those factors in there with the regulated buffer area with a minimum non-disturbance. Proposed for Hardyville MZDO wetland buffers, 35-foot minimum off of jurisdictional wetlands, no averages. If it's a jurisdictional wetland, you're gonna have a 35-foot minimum. And the utilities will not be allowed within that undisturbed. That's another place that is crept up in our problems before, is we have to make way for BJWSA or others, as we have seen here recently. It is going to be located in the Land Development Regulations Administration and interpretation by the Staff Review Committee. So that's not just a one-person deal. It's the committee with multidiscipline. Allow activities within the buffer. Recreation, replanting can only be native species. Non-species. I don't know what that one is. So everything built in there to maintain the look, maintain the feel, maintain the protections that we have in our native development. So our next steps, we'll draft and submit to Planning Commission for regulation. Recommendation. I'm not sure if we're going to make the March one. We potentially will make the March Planning Commission. If I can get through budget this week. We'll then forward it to Planning Commission for review, public input, and adoption. So that's the overview of what we're going to do, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
We've had a lot of recent examples. First of all, I should say I like going from the 25 to 35 foot. It's based on evaluations of other areas, but I think it is a positive step, that we're taking. So I applaud your recommendation. But we've had a number of situations, including we're going through another one right now, and this is not just wetlands buffers, but with buffers. As we see property A, they want to maximize their land usage, and they build up to their property line with what is now a 25-foot buffer. Then, years later, somebody else comes in, and they want to build up to their property line with a 25-foot buffer. And we know, especially with land disturbance, we're seeing more and more, recent examples included, where that total of 50 feet is, you can see more through that with these planted pines and the underbrush than, a fence would give you more privacy than 50 feet. It just, even 100 feet, 150 feet, you see it along Argent Boulevard. It's not a lot, especially with thin pines and small underbrush. So, where am I headed with that? Should we also, since we're doing this, should we also be looking at that 25-foot buffer that always gets thrown back in our face on every development? And that's a general question to anybody.
And we also, one thing on that is a lot of those, that is a zoning point when you're talking about those buffers. We're not talking about land development regulations for those buffers.
Right, but that's part of the MZDO, right?
It's part of the MZDO, but with the development agreements that are in place, we're less likely to be able to change those in the future, the ones that have already been adopted.
I think maybe a better way to state it is we could certainly look at amending those standards if you want to create greater buffers, but from an applicability standpoint, that's likely to only apply to new developments that are coming in.
Yes, sir.
If you have an existing development agreement, because the fact that when we give them a PDD, it sets the zoning and it no longer then follows the MZDO, it follows the PDD.
Right.
That is the standards that can't be changed. But it could be applied to new developments coming in.
So here's what I'm thinking. Let's say if everybody agrees that 25 feet in most cases is not a real big difference, and both sides are building to their property line. What if we changed it, and the reason I'm bringing it up now is maybe just do one thing, you know, do them both at the same time, if that makes any sense. And then, once you have the new standard in place, you can't make anybody, but you sure can ask, right? And, you know, here's our new standard. We'd like you to, and that,
Comply with our new standard.
and the worst that can happen, they say no. But at least if we put a new standard in, we have a basis for asking the question. Right now, we don't.
And Mayor, we can certainly do that, but the one thing I would caution you on then is if you make the ask and they say no, that can't be the basis then for denying their
Right,
request.
exactly.
That's what we have to be very careful
We all
about.
have to be,
Yeah.
understand it. But you know what? Active open spaces. That was sidewalks. We've asked a lot of things that that it's not necessarily, are they legally bound to say yes, right?
Sidewalks, yes now, but,
Well,
yes, some of the other ones.
But what I'm saying is, if we have a standard, we should at least set it where we think it should be. And, you know, at some point in time, if we ask the question,
Katie and I will take some time and look into this, and come up with some ideas. I think one of the big points that we can do is by limiting what can go in these buffers and what can't go in these buffers. I think we're learning a lot from that over the years. Certainly, and OSEC with Clarios, a part of it was the BJWSA needed certain easements. Royal Oaks, same thing. And we can work on that and make sure that we are simple and clear and transparent.
That was the question I was going to ask, but I agree with what the mayor is saying. I mean, if we wrap this up into one, and with these PDDs that have already been approved and before they come with the master plan, if we say our best practices now recommend, they say no, they say no. But if we say this is our best practices now, you know, it puts the emphasis on them to say, no, I don't want to comply with best practices. You know, it puts the ball back in their court. The other question I have is, if you go back one, where it says about no utilities. I agree with not having developer utilities in that buffer, but if it's Beaufort Jasper Water Sewer or Dominion or whoever, those types, I don't want to.
We can work around it better.
Yeah,
instead
well,
of
that's-
just
that-
an after the
That's where I
fact.
want. I don't want the developer using it for their stormwater drainage or that kind of thing.
That's exactly why we put it in, and we can have some flexibility written in there for those utilities that you're talking about, but we see the stormwater infrastructure within the buffer areas is where a lot of the thinner buffer requirement comes from. So,
Yes.
because it has historically been allowed there, so that is exactly what we were hoping to eliminate from that.
Okay, and I'd like to thank you for the no average. I hate that thought of average. We've seen that, and that infuriates me.
Discussed it yesterday.
That's just a way of getting around what the true meaning of what we want to do. I think 35 feet is a workable, is reasonable also. So I thank you and staff very much for taking this on. It's something that we definitely needed to do.
Thank you.
So saying that 35 feet, that means they absolutely cannot touch any of those trees that's within that 35-foot buffer?
Unless it is for what we're saying, unless there's, sometimes the Army Corps and best management practices includes replanting of those native species and recreation. Sometimes you do want to have that ability if it is a usable area. So those are the two times that there could be some minor disturbance, but it'd be very minimal.
And of course, you guys are enforcing that 15 trees per acre.
Absolutely.
And yeah, because I'm just very curious to find out how it's going to be applicable to the one that we're discussing.
is the 35 feet to be considered part of their open space requirement?
It's, right now, that would not, the way that our open space is written, no, that does not include it.
Let's make sure we continue that, because I don't want to,
So
I
we
don't
won't
want them
make
to
that
start
change in the
looking at that, because
MZDO.
you just said
Right.
like a walking trail or something like that. That stays out of their open space requirement.
Yes. And then the only other thing I wanted to add is, we did for Car Track, for instance, because it was in a more environmentally sensitive area of the city, we did put in additional. So if we get into a situation like that again, we can recommend a higher buffer.
Thank you.
But that was a new PDD that we
Yes.
created and an annexation. So that was, we weren't, it wasn't a 20-year inheritance.
Right.
So we understand anything new, any new PDDs, it wouldn't, and that's why, even if it's just a few things, let's put the standard in, and then we can have something we can hold people to that makes more sense.
Mayor, would the preference of council be to see this go forward or to put a pause on this while staff works at taking a look at our other buffer and setback standards and then bring something forward that's comprehensive? Or would you prefer that this, since it appears that we may have something here that you can support, would you want us to move this forward now while we work on that?
Personally, I think this wetland buffer should go in as quickly as we can.
Okay.
And, take your time with the other and do as thorough an analysis as you did with this.
Okay.
So that I wouldn't want to delay this indefinitely while you're doing the other analysis.
My fear would be somebody would try to push through before this window.
Yeah. So this will, because it's a change to our MZDO language, this will need to go through the planning commission, but that would be our first start. So we'll look to get this on the agenda for their next meeting, which means it'll probably show up on your council agenda at the April 1st, the first meeting in April.
And since this includes new DAs coming through, so that requirement is going to run with the land.
So I think it's a good opportunity to really kind of make sure that we're all on the same page. With the wetland buffer amendments, it would apply to existing development agreements, but not those that have an approved master plan.
Gotcha.
Okay. We don't have anything that would be considered under riparian rights. We have no title properties that currently within our jurisdiction.
We might, but I don't know that we regulate development based upon that classification. We basically have any wetlands buffer, which would include our riparian waterways, would fall under that, I believe.
I think with our terrain, with
Yeah.
what we have, we have wetlands around those
Yes,
typically
that's probably-
that already buffer, like Katie mentioned Carr with the New River headwaters. That would be one, but it's.
When I
We've gone
protected.
beyond.
When I was in Beaufort, there came up to the tidal pond, who had jurisdiction? Did
Yes.
Beaufort County have that jurisdiction, or did Corps with the riparian rights? Was it 30 feet, or was it 50 feet, or was it 10 feet? And it got to be a huge issue. And I just, as we expand and grow, we may start seeing more of a possibility of having that.
I was gonna say, we may have some water bodies, but I think your statement is right, that most of our water bodies are surrounded by wetlands, and so we've not, we don't have like a river buffer setback, because we don't have a lot of property that is immediately adjacent to the water body.
Millstone
So
Landing would be
tidal is
really
not included.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a workshop question for council. I brought up at my report some time ago. I met this guy who's an architect, and he mentioned a term I never heard of before. It's called tactical urbanism. My question to staff and to council, would you would you like to hear a presentation? I don't know how long it would be, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I guess we could make it as long as we want it to be. But I can invite this person or not invite him, but I should give him an answer one way or the other. Any thoughts from council? Would you like to?
I think,
I thought it was. That's why I brought it up. I thought,
of education.
given the fact that, we have set White Hardy Boulevard as a higher priority this year, perhaps we can learn something from it. And also, I am meeting Thursday, well, a follow-up meeting after my tour at SCAD, and I brought this up on a report as well. There's a whole lot of talent 30 minutes away. And, it would be free, it would be a student, and as somebody said, I think it was Val, said to me, look what they did in Savannah. They helped Savannah refurbish a lot of things. So I'd like to just plant the seed, and maybe we could have them come in, someone, and I can ask this guy that I'm meeting with Thursday, and see what ways they can help us. Who knows? Why not? They have. I'm amazed by the amount of talent they have over there. I didn't realize it.
We've tapped into them for internship opportunities.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to foster that pipeline.
Is Jay from Jay's from SCAD, right? Bright young man. I mean, and how do we expand
And
on
he
to
needed
that?
to get the credit in order to graduate and complete his program, so it's a win-win.
So
Yep.
there might be other areas. I mean, our media department's doing phenomenal work. And they have an animation department. There's so many like Jay. I just would encourage us to use it. And Josh, if you want to, if you think there's something that the council would benefit from having somebody from SCAD, I would make that part of a workshop as
Yes, sir.
well.
I was gonna say, if I can work with you to get some contact information, would love to invite them. And maybe let's, as a placeholder, let's plan on having a 15-minute presentation from the tactical urbanism gentleman and potentially SCAD at our March workshop date.
So the Tuesday or Thursday this week, I'm meeting with this gentleman I met, Brian Gilbert. He's from SCAD. He's coming in as a follow-up. I forget what department he is, but I can invite one other council member. So, of course, Mayor Pro Tem has first dibs. If one of you want to join me in that meeting. And this is just a follow-up to see, potential collaboration areas. And Josh, of course, you don't have any quorum restrictions, so if you want to come in as well, or send
sir.
Neil or Matt, they'll be here at 2:00 on Thursday.
I have guests coming in from out of town.
Okay, so that goes to the next Mayor Pro Tem. Val, if you'd like to join us this coming Thursday at 2,
25th, 26th?
26.
Okay, I'm wide open.
All right, it's
So where is it going to take place?
right here,
Right here.
City Hall, about an hour, because I have a show to go to that night, so it won't be long.
What time is it, sir?
My show,
Yeah, we want to go too.
2:00, 2:00 here on Thursday.
Thank you. Oh.
There's one other meeting and I hope I'm not talking out of, but I can do whatever I want. So I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem again. 3 p.m. Tuesday here. Warren Waters, he's the guy who's doing White Hardy Boulevard.
Tuesday, can I let you know in a few hours?
Yeah, that, again, we'll go, it's not that, you know, I'm trying to include, you know, instead of just doing these meetings myself, I'll put, I'm going to put them out there for you, and we'll go down in order of Mayor Pro Tems. And you're welcome. If you don't want to, you don't have to.
I'll let you know in a few hours.
Okay. That's all I have. My stomach's growling. I don't know about anybody else. If you'd like to adjourn, I'll accept the motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Thank you all.